to start with our meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Account of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament for purposes of looking into the Auditor General's report as well as the annual report of the Department of Transport and Public Works and its agency. The meeting is going to be run in three parts. The first meeting is going to be the Standing Committee on Public Accounts together with the Auditor General and the Audit Committee of the department as well as the audit committees. The next meeting will be joined by the department and its agency or entity. And the third part will be where we allow members of the public who are in the meeting or one way or the other would like to ask questions or points of clarity. For purposes of record keeping, can I ask the honorable members present to please identify themselves?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Chairperson, and to the AG colleagues and the Audit Committee. Good afternoon also. My name is Matloli Maseko, a member in the Standing Committee of Public Accounts in Western Cape Provincial Parliament.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. My name is Derek America. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a member of the committee.
Good afternoon, Chair, AG, everybody present, Mbulelo Isaac Sileko, member of the committee.
And everyone else, member Aisha Kasim.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I'm now going to ask the AG first to give us the audit outcomes of both the department and the agencies. Just talk us through the report without necessarily having to read it word for word. We're taking it as read and brought to our attention those salient issues that you think needs to be brought to our attention. And thereafter, we'll give over to the audit committee and I will allow honorable members who want to ask questions to continue. AG.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon to you, Chair, to the members of the committee, as well as all the colleagues. I'm going to take you through the presentation, and like the Chair has said, I will take it as read and
got car keys of a VW car. Someone left them outside. If you can come and collect it at the lost and found. It's inside the thing. Okay, honorable members, honorable ministers, HOD, and the rest of your delegation, welcome to the meeting of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament for purposes of looking into the annual report of the department and its agency, which is General Motors. And then also we'll be looking at the Auditor General reports, audit outcome of the department and the agency, as well as the audit committee report of both the department and the agency. This meeting followed a prior meeting we've had in committee with the Auditor General to be briefed about the outcomes of the department and the agency's audit outcomes. This meeting, for your information, is also an open public meeting. It is open to the public. After the honorable members have asked their questions and comments or points of clarity, we will allow any member of the public who might be present at the meeting for them to also ask questions. And then before we may start, I don't know if the ministers and the HOD would like to make some preliminary comments, and thereafter we will go straight to the reports. Honorable Minister.
Chairperson, I'll be very brief because this is indeed the final scope appearance of DTPW as you know it. So I'm looking forward to the session. We know we had our 11th consecutive clean audit, so I think it's also a good way to wind up the department and close the book as we now start focusing after today on the future, being the Department of Infrastructure, which is where DTPW and all its lessons and its excellence and processes will ultimately play a huge role in successful implementation in terms of the new department as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I don't think I can add anything more. We had a long discussion this morning. All I can say is we are still Rugby World Cup champions as we speak. So there's nothing else more that I can say after that. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I think that statement, I think, also reverberated and lifted the spirit of the nation as well, as we are the nation of champions. Now, honorable members, HOD, any comments?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Marissa Moore, the HOD for Mobility. I'm happy to have the opportunity to sit in today to see how these proceedings work. Thank you.
Thanks.
Chair, just from my side, thank you very much. And as the ministers have mentioned, the final report from TPW. Also, of course, then the final report from the Audit Committee that was explicitly and exclusively for Transport and Public Works. And now, of course, has changed to an Audit Committee for Mobility and for Infrastructure. So certainly, if I may be opportune and just thank officially the Audit Committee that we had for Transport and Public Works for the role that they played and the support that they gave to the department. It is sincerely appreciated. Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable members, I would like to allow those honorable members who would like to ask questions. What we'll do, we normally take vote at the same time. So if I can get an indication, we are asking questions on C, E, and F. on both, or you want us to deal with the department first or with the? Okay, let's go with the department then first. Yeah. C, E, and F, and the Auditor General's report as well.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, good afternoon, colleagues, and congratulations again to the department, to the audit outcome. Looking forward to the 12th one, separated mobility and the Department of Infrastructure for the coming year. And I know it's possible and it's going to be doable as always. And I feel like I'm just clapping hands to the fish swimming in the sea. Or what we've been saying congratulations for about 11 financial years. So really it's appreciated, and also the support that you do have. Just the one question from myself, Minister, you in your forward the achievement of 99.8% spending on your budget. Now we've got a new reporting system, the new culture of reporting from the department, and we are trying to get a clear understanding with our stakeholders of the audit committee. Now, when you look at the departments, is it the departments? Let me make sure that it's there. Yeah, the department's achievement, the program 3 and the program 2, because the program 6 is the 100% achievement from the service delivery indicators. Now, I was trying to align the expenditure, to link the expenditure, actual expenditure, to the achievements. It's a very complicated conversation that we are trying to find out, because this document is a public document that they can see. And then when they see the pink of not achieved 74%, it sort of reflects not in a good way, especially when you see the budget that is totally spent, because we have to interlink. Now I'm going to ask the same question I asked the Auditor General, to link, and I know we've got a HOD and it's brilliant CFO that always has made sure that we do understand by the time we leave this place. You do have the underachievement on program 3. You look at the audit report, it also says you did spend. Now, I want to link that expenditure to the APP delivery indicators that there is an not achieved underachievement. But we know that means, especially infrastructure, you might take the money because beyond your control, the project that you thought you will do as per the APP, you didn't implement, you had to shift somewhere. Now, the agreement of the report with the AG that you have there not achieved, how do you agree to the reporting that we can say, yes, you didn't achieve on the APP, but you achieved because there are the new indicators that you created for you to spend the budget allocated to you? I hope it makes sense, so that where do we, in the book we can see that, but there's the document on its own. How do we say that we can have a block, or we can have something that can give the true reflection of the achievement from the department? And then when do you put those indicators for them to be audited from the AG side? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable America,
Thank-
Honorable Seleku,
Pardon me.
Honorable Nkondo.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, without sounding like a stuck record, I am not going to.
On the department, on the department.
Just the department.
Okay, yeah.
Look, Again, reiterate what my colleague has stated about the unblemished clean audit for this 11th consecutive year. Well done to the department and everybody involved. Chairperson, I would also want to, it is not the first, my own experience, it is not the first time that the department for an entire financial year, and we know how challenging the previous financial year, we merged out of a very dark hole that the department managed to incur no irregular expenditure. Is testimony of the rigorous internal control mechanisms embedded in the department and the leadership that that's at display. Now, Chairperson, in our previous meeting where you were present, we had an in-depth, particularly coming from yourself to the CFO in terms of the 30% procurement and that. Now, I have a meme that I received, which I'm going to state it for the record, which is either misleading or it is false. It says, did you know the DA-run Department of Mobility in the Western Cape opposes the 30% preference for small contractors as per the Procurement Policy Act? Now, Chairperson, I was in that meeting, I chaired it. It was never stated at all. The department didn't express itself in opposition with whatever preferential procurement legislation and policy imperatives exist. Instead, we were taken through high court, not a higher court, not a high court, higher court judgment, constitutional court judgment that expressed itself on that. And, for all intents and purposes, any person with a, with the two brain cells will then, make sense to what was explained. Now, I understand, Chairperson, that it might be for political purposes that people will put out these things, which is probably not correct. But it doesn't reflect on the DA. It reflects on the department, on hard-working officials that make sure that equitable procurement processes are and transparent procurement processes are followed. And it's an indictment on our officials, hardworking, that they simply just kowtow to the ruling party. That's false. I want to state it quite categorically that it is something that we should dismiss with the contempt it deserves. And then lastly, Chairperson, that in terms of succession planning, and I know culture of accountability and control, etc., is embedded within the department. To what extent, what risk can the department perhaps share with us that may impact on that sort of clean governance record that the department had so far in terms of delivering the best possible results? What assurance can the department provide us? Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Silegu.
Thank you very much, Chair. Allow me to read once again this afternoon. Chair, I won't be long, and I'll just on page 138, I just need the department to, because we are closing the department. We are closing it. And now, but there's a lot of risks that has been mentioned here. So is this risk going to be, are we going to transfer the risk to the different departments, or are we just going to say the department close it with their risk and then we're going to look at new risks? Just need to explain that as well. And also in terms of 201 on number 9, it is about disciplinary action instituted in 3 cases. 201, 201 years. 201. We just need more detail. I don't need faces. I don't need name. I just need a background in terms of these particular cases that has been instituted. And also there is other 4 cases where officials were found not to be responsible in terms of irregular expenditure. Am I at the department now? Yes. 201 is at the bottom, right, left. It's on your left at the bottom, it's blue. You get it? Thank you very much. So those are the 2 issues at the bottom. I will just need more clarity in terms of that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Let me maybe go back to the question asked by Member Maseko to help me also understand this question that we have been trying to understand with the Auditor General and the others. Considering that program 2, if I look at it in the book, I think it's got about 6 sub-programs, if I'm not mistaken. And program 2, according to the AG, has achieved 78% and 22% not achieved. And then program 3, which they audited, the transport infrastructure, has got about 5 and achieved 26%. Both of them, the other one has spent 99.4% and then the other one 99.8% budget. So if I were to really understand, because my question, which I think we've been trying to ask and understand, is still very difficult as we conclude the annual reports by tomorrow. It's still very fuzzy. The relationship between spending and budget, if you can explain that in terms of your performance indicators, because my assumption is that when planning takes place of strategic plans and annual plans, there's always a relationship placed between the indicators, they are costed. So what this then in a simple-minded person or pedestrian explains is that here you can actually not achieve, you can achieve below program 3, you're saying you've achieved only 26% with a 99.8% budget and not achieved 74% of those indicators that you have set. But interestingly, when somebody looks at your, I think if one considers page 101 on program 3, if we look at all of those sub-programs from a money point of view in terms of actual expenditure, in terms of rands and cents, there's actually nothing that indicates, the relationship of that 74%. So if you can just explain this, because until I think we get some kind of an answer, then I think from where I'm sitting, Chair, and as a person who also sits in the budget committee, I'm trying to understand what exactly do we discuss when colleagues or departments come and present budgets and argue for more money, and the relationship of that money. Because when you ask that money, you are asking that money in context to the indicators or the work that you are going to do. So unless somebody says to me that actually the 74% not achieved, and I'm sure the CFO from a money point of view can explain this, the 74% that is not, it's actually everything that is non-financial. Perhaps she can explain what exactly is that in the transport infrastructure that is non-financial. That means with the 24% that you have achieved there, I can't even tell you that 99.8% in terms of that indicators. If I were to ask per indicator how much was spent, perhaps that's another way of answering me to understand per indicator with the budget that you have for this, how much was spent. So I think I'm just gonna request, maybe as we are concluding by tomorrow, Chairperson, maybe we can still find this particular answer. But for now, it's still very evasive. That's why I was saying earlier on in the AG's meeting, I chose to keep quiet because it just, I think it just goes beyond maybe my pay grade or level of comprehension. Thanks.
Honorable Nkondlo, just you were not with us in the morning. Just for your information, the HOD of infrastructure is Mrs. Cooch, and the HOD for mobility is Mrs. Moore, and the CFO is is Advocate Smith. I thought I must just let you know about that. Okay. Okay. Honorable Kasim.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'd like to ask a question under Part E, the compliance report. I just want some clarity from the department under labor relations. There are 3 cases listed here. There's a dismissal, which is 1, and then there's suspension without pay and with a final written warning, which is 2. So the table just below that, it has 2 cases of bribery and fraud, which is quite serious, Chairperson. And then there's 1 case of absent without a reason or permission. So I just want to get clarity. Out of that 3 cases, 1 was a dismissal and 2 was suspension without pay and a final written warning. Is one of that 2 cases under steal, bribes, or commit fraud still sitting out in our department? If I can just get clarity on that, because I'm pretty sure that out of that 2, it can't just be the one that was absent without a reason. So can I get clarity? Is someone who stole or committed fraud still sitting in our department based on the tables over there? Yeah.
Yeah, may I just ask for clarification? I know the members raised Part E. Could I just ask exactly what page you're referring to?
132.
Sorry, then what? Then you're in a different
Under Part E.
Chair. That's Part B. You're in GMT's book. Sorry, we're not yet in GMT. Sorry.
Okay, is that the same? Okay. Okay, I'll keep it. Sorry. No,
Sorry, I'm just confused. Thank you.
I think with honorable members, we are now going to ask the department to respond and the ministers if they want to respond. Honorable Minister.
Yeah, I'll be very brief because I am going to ask the HOD, through the HOD, the CFO to answer this, because this is not the first session I have with SCOPA where the issue of budget spend versus targets are questioned. And obviously, Member Maseko did direct the question to me, but there is a logical explanation for that. And I do hope in very layman's terms that it doesn't go above anybody's pay grade, that it equals the playing field so we all understand actually how we get to that. So I'll just, through you, Chairperson, just ask this HOD and CFO to explain. Thank you. There is a rational explanation.
Chair for me. Thank you very much. So I'll pick up Member Maseko's question, hopefully also then respond through you, Chair, to Member Nkondlo's question, because I think they are ultimately pretty similar. So to start with, it's important to understand that not all indicators are directly tied to the budget, which is exactly the point that you've made, and which is at times very difficult. If you were to ask, right, cost indicator X, it's not as simple as putting a budget link to a specific indicator. When one looks at, let me start with program 3, because that was where for both members through your chair, the question was first raised, and I'll then get to program number 2. But in the case of program 3, from a roads perspective, while the budget is spent, there are some aspects that impact, which then causes projects to be delayed or for us to redirect our resources. And I'll use one example where it says number of kilometers of gravelled roads re-gravelled. That's one of the indicators where there's been an underperformance. When we had flooding in the year under review, what we do is we redirect internal resources, which are our own staff from the district roads engineering team, as well as from the district municipality, to then go and deal with the repairs that are required across the gravel road network from a flood point of view, which then means that the money that's been allocated to pay is transferred to the district municipalities, or is used to pay for the staff of the district roads engineer, our own staff, is spent because that's paid for, but the team have to do other work now, which doesn't contribute to achieving the number of kilometers of gravel roads re-gravelled. So the budget is spent, if that makes sense, because they're still doing work, they're still doing work that is necessary, but we've had to redirect their attention away from re-gravelling of certain roads that was on their program to respond to the flood damage. Now, we do not then go and have an indicator in our annual performance plan that says responding to gravel roads as a result of flood damage. How many kilometers of gravel roads have you repaired, or how much time have you spent repairing roads as a result of flood damage? That isn't incorporated as a particular indicator in the annual performance plan, and therefore isn't captured when we come to do a final report from an annual report perspective. However, of course, reading through the performance parts of the annual report, you may pick up that we've said there was flood damage, teams were redirected to respond to that, to particular projects or part of the network. The other one is that if one takes some of the other targets here, for example, work opportunities created, youth employed, women employed, and so on, is that it's not necessarily that people were not employed, it's that we do not have all of the evidence that is required to prove that that's come through from the contractor to the department in order to justify including that work opportunity on our system that is then auditable to the standards required by the AG. So the work is done, the projects are happening, and there are work opportunities, but potentially you don't have an ID or an attendance register or something, and therefore you don't count that particular opportunity formally in the performance information. So again, the contractor is paid because the work is done, the project is delivered, but you don't have the total number necessarily of what you're targeting because you don't have the evidence to be able to justify that particular quantum.
Before you proceed, HOD, you don't have the evidence because it was not given to you. Or
to us, so it wasn't provided necessarily from the contractor to us as a department that meets the necessary standards so that when we are audited, it meets the necessary audit requirements.
Yeah, can I follow up? So when it was set as an indicator, that issue of not, or that possibility of not getting the information from the contractor was not factored in your follow-up or tracking tools from the contractor.
Certainly, it is from the point of view of the teams and the contract coordinators engage with the contractors to try and get the information that's required. In some instances, it's not available, and certainly what that means is, and you will have seen it as the years have gone by, that certainly number one, our reporting on these numbers has improved because we've actually made it a requirement in some of the contracts that this information is provided. And then also our teams go back and try and do a review and an assessment and gather that information. So the teams are far more circumspect in their target setting now, understanding exactly the kinds of troubles that we've been having, and also acknowledging the greater focus that's required in terms of the auditability or the audit processes of the information. So we have been far more circumspect in terms of the targets that have been set. You'll have a look in this year's APP with the kind of numbers that have been set. It is lower, understanding this particular challenge that we have. So if I may continue, Chair.
Lot of interest from members. I know this is a very complicated simplification you've given, as you are trying to simplify it, but it's complicated, but I understand personal. But Honorable Seleko.
I'm just trying to HOD as well, trying maybe to understand. And my question is basically trying just to understand in the simplest way that my question will be in this sense, HOD, that is it possible that the department is able to use 98% of its budget, but not able to fulfill some of the targets in terms of the programs of the department? That question would, I think that's the most simplest way to put it. So it's possible. Thank you very much.
Yeah, before
Okay,
Honorable
may I respond?
Okay, let's get quickly. Let's get
Yes, motion.
okay. Let's get Honorable Maseko, then Honorable Ngondo, then we respond.
Thank you very much. And I think from my side, I do understand it's very much possible that you can spend your budget and not achieve. And the reason is, like, when I asked my question, was clear that you can be that due to where you don't have control, you were implementing a project and the community dynamics, the easier way that we use, and then you shift that money to do something else because obviously the demand is more. So always you can shift the money. But what we are at the stage, I think, from the scope that we say your financial auditing is every department is good, but we want to go to the performance auditing. So for us to understand when we have a conversation with the AG about the performance auditing, also we have picked up from other departments that the target setting is a key to each and every issue that we raise, that when you set the target, what is it that you say you are going to achieve? If you say you're going to achieve the kilometers of graveling and you move the money because the floods happened, now, when do you put in that target of now you are tending to? Is it you have to cut the kilometers and have another program that talks to the emergency services that you put the money in there to react to the disaster that can happen? Because surely the statistics shows that almost every year you do have the disaster you have to react to, so that we don't have the underachievement, or we can do the annual reporting looking at exactly where you performed, where you didn't perform with your target setting. I think it's where we are trying to get the explanation of the indicators and the target setting. Minister Noma French put it nicely so about when you talk in the plane, the hostess talking to people and say you have to put the seat belt for in case, and then now your target setting has to be whether they were listening or those who put the target setting, because if you are going to say whether you're listening, you don't have control of the people and you can't set target on whether people were listening to you or not. But if you talk about those who did listen to you and put on the seat belt, it's an easier set target that we can see if you did achieve or you didn't achieve. So we are trying to get the rationale behind some of the target setting in the APP versus what you achieved with the budget that you spent about more than 99%. That is service delivery is what is the rationale behind that, and also attaching that to the auditor general in talking to your performance. Like I say that if we see 74% not achieved in pink,
we see a little bit a red flag, but it's not a red flag, but we want the reporting to be the true reflection of what you achieve, because you work hard as a department, that it has to talk to what you are doing as a department. Thank you, Chair.
Covered by Honorable Maseko.
Chairperson. No, Chair, I was still listening because I think the HOD we interjected she was still explaining the target setting element. So I'm still listening, because one of the things that I'm interested in what she was explaining is actually target setting. Is the problem in how they are setting their own targets? Because the targets, I think it's a managerial issue or principle, SMART targets. Because once you are going to set targets that are outside of your control, if you do not have mechanisms on which such things that are beyond your control you are able to mitigate, you are always going to be sitting with a challenge of saying, I could not achieve because there was this and that and the other. One thing that I learned as a principal in management is SMART, something that is within your control. So it's about target setting, which is what I was listening to her, of some of the indicators that now they are starting to improve. Because remember, AG is measuring according to what they had said. AG didn't come with anything new. So all these things that have happened, they've happened on targets that were set by the department when the department started. And the department would have known over a period of years, having been implementing these particular programs, that these are things that are happening in between. So this is what we are trying to understand. And the other issue that I'm interested in, that I want the HOD, as she was still explaining, is really to get to this point of the budget. Because one thing I want to get educated about as a member of the budget committee when we finish in this process is to understand, out of the 11, actually there are 11 if we talk about the 2 programs, and I'm just choosing program 2 and 3. Out of the 6 sub-programs, which are these ones? I need specifics, which, if you look at that budget, if you say to me, of that budget, the 6 sub-programs, actually all of them or 3 of them only use 2% of the budget. It's important for me so that I can be able to understand indeed that here, as it was simplified by Member Seleko, you see that you can achieve or not achieve outside of the budget, because all we are trying to understand is the relationship between performance targets and budget allocated. So that is the simplicity that I needed. So I was just asking, Chair, that maybe we allow her to conclude so that we are better educated and it comes to our pay grade, as the Minister has said, on our behalf.
Sure. So there are a couple of other aspects and nuances within, let me start with roads, and the same thing with Program 2, Public Works, to remember that across these 2 programs, we sit particularly with national sector indicators, as you would see in many other departments. So at times, the indicators are set, not the numbers, not the target, but of course the actual wording and requirement of the indicator that doesn't necessarily or easily align with the work that is specifically being done. So I just want to put that up front as well. In the year under review, just also a recollection, there was an adjustment budget where the budgets were pushed down. There were budget cuts, if my memory serves me correctly, in the year under review, and no indicators or targets were changed. So we did not at that point change, because we didn't have there weren't the processes in place to reduce the targets because budgets were necessarily reduced. So just to also flag that that's something that one needs to remember, that unless a department is allowed or provided for in an adjustments process to also adjust their targets downwards, if there's a budget cut, you are going to sit with that anomaly come the end of the year. Within the roads context, the planning, and remember the targets are set in February when our APPs are tabled. They're finalized with the budget in roundabout end of January, beginning of February. And by the time the year comes along, there are a lot of things that impact you as you go, whether it's flood damage, whether it's a particular weather event, or whether it's the fact that you haven't received approval for a certain project as part of the process. So within roads, an example for a project where we require agreement from Transnet and necessary wayleaves because potentially our road is going over a freight rail line. If we don't get that, that means that that project is delayed before we can go out to tender or before work can necessarily happen on it. So while you understand you've got a particular date in terms of your planning, and based upon your planning, you are putting your targets into the annual performance plan, that can shift, or an environmental approval could be delayed, and as a result, then your project doesn't go out to site when you anticipate. Let me also just add that the other thing within the road space, particularly and in public works that impacts their construction, is the fact you are now required to get the certificates of authorization from the Department of Labor. That can take a minimum of a month and take anything longer than that. So when you anticipate a project is going to start on site, doesn't necessarily materialize, given those other aspects that in terms of your planning, you say this is when you anticipate, so your delivery will happen in line with that particular program, and the achievements that you're measuring you would then have work opportunities and others. And if any of those approvals in the process are delayed beyond what you anticipate in your program, you're not going to be able to report on that in your annual report. The other aspect just to note, of course, is that within the road side of things, if you're talking about number of kilometers of gravel roads upgraded to surface standards or others, the technical indicator descriptor, if you go back to the annual performance plan, I think it is Annexure D of the annual performance plan, gives a very specific definition for your indicator. And in those instances, in some of the projects, it means you must have a completion certificate or practical completion, reached practical completion before you can count that performance into your numbers. So the project may be, for all intents and purposes, complete, Chair, that you've spent the budget, pretty much paid almost your final invoices, but your practical completion or your certificate comes on the 1st of April as opposed to the 31st of March. And therefore you cannot count the kilometers of road that have actually been completed because you don't have that on the 31st of March. You only have it on the 1st of April. And therefore it will show as underperformance in the annual report. So those are some of those dynamics within the Program 3 environment. So yes, it is perfectly possible through your chair to have achieved a 99.78% spend and not have a reported performance in terms of the numbers, but you have actually still achieved and delivered the services that are required. The other one in Program 2 for Provincial Public Works, and just to flag here the number of infrastructure designs ready for tender, in this instance, that particular indicator and the underperformance links back to education infrastructure designs ready for tender. And it was a point that was raised in our previous standing committee session this morning, where the Department of Education actually held back and changed scope or put projects on hold. So those particular projects didn't go out and weren't ready for tender. But there is very little in that instance in terms of the budget. Remember, for education and for health, the budget is with those departments. It's not in the former Department of Transport and Public Works budget. The staff, however, are. So we would have paid COE in terms of our staff to manage the work done generally through consultants, but the performance would have been under because of the halt put on it or some of the aspects taken from the user department. Then the other indicator that you see there, because it was 7 out of 9, was the number of facilities provided. And in the main, that's because of updating of information on the asset register. So the numbers and the detail changes, that's not specifically budget linked in terms of the asset register information. So consolidating urban, we had a particular focus on certain projects, for example, our building 9 Daub Street sat across 11, I think it was, different urban, and they were all originally separately listed, went through a process of consolidation. So you'll see a reduction in the number of facilities that are reported, but it has nothing to do with budget. It's not actually attached to a budget aspect, just a general number in terms of detail. Chair, I'm not certain whether I have sufficiently explained. I trust I have. Perhaps some of the members of the team may wish to to further add, but I've tried to explain that it is possible to achieve a budget spend, but not necessarily achieve all of the targets. Number one, you've redirected your attention in certain areas if something's come along, and then you haven't had an opportunity to adjust your indicators or bring in new indicators into the process in order to take account of that particular work. Chair, may I move on to some of the other questions? Thank you very much. So the first point made by Member America through your chair were around the 30%. I think that was just a comment. Certainly the department and previously TPW does not oppose anything. We convey and deliver what we're supposed to in terms of the law. Your question about succession planning and the approach.
HOD, can I also just request, I will really request the meeting, whoever is gonna respond. The issue of the 30% was dealt with this morning in another committee. This is another committee now. That's why I thought I'm not gonna really interject on Honorable America. So we are dealing with C, E, and F. That's what I normally do also with other committee members. If they had their own fights in the morning, they must not bring it here at Scopa. So what was dealt with in the morning was dealt with by those members there. They must sort out their issues there. So here now, let's deal with C, E, and F. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Succession planning, there was a question about succession planning and what assurance can the department give? Of course, you're now through your chair sitting with two different departments, the Department of Mobility and a Department of Infrastructure, that have within them some of the previous management, but also, of course, new management and systems and processes that are required from the relevant accounting officers, from the relevant CFOs, and so on. Certainly from my perspective, if I look back, my intention and my approach certainly with our management team has been to try to bring in youth, which will why you'll see a number of people in here from parts of our department that you may not have seen before, for them to get exposed to the type of working of the department. We bring in and have brought in observers to our bid committee processes so that some of the younger, less experienced staff members would be able to get a sense of the kind of culture, the questions, the issues within the organization. And in that way, hope to convey what is necessary from the point of the tone from the top, and the manner in which either department, either the mobility department or the Department of Infrastructure, would function into the future. Through you, Chair, the question from Member Seleko on page 138 about the risks and what happens with those. I can ultimately only formally speak on behalf of the Department of Infrastructure to say that certainly what we have done is we did and have carried through the risks that were from what was TPW into the Department of Infrastructure that are pertinent and applicable to the Department of Infrastructure. Sat back, reconsidered those, including also risks that have come through from what was the Department of Human Settlements, and then try to reformulate our strategic risk register, have a review then per program of the risk register per program, as well as then whatever operational risks are required. So certainly I can say from our perspective, and I imagine that that's the process that enterprise risk management has facilitated for both new departments, carrying the risks across and then doing assessment and review, and where necessary, potentially a reconsideration of what the actions may be or that could be taken across the two departments to respond to the risks that are there. So they aren't just lost into the system. Then through your chair, page 201, the question that was posed about disciplinary action that was taken. I may need to phone a friend, Ramesh. Okay, I thought it would have been Bashir, but okay. For the disciplinary action in relation to irregular expenditure. Where's Bashir? Yes, I thought it was Bashir. Okay, otherwise I was going mad through you, Chair. So Bashir, are you able to give an indication of what that was in relation to, please? I think that was the question.
Thank you, HUD, through your chair. On page 201, it speaks about 3 cases of progressive discipline, and then the 4 cases where there was basically no discipline taken. So all of it relates to irregular expenditure. The 3 where there was progressive discipline, it was in relation to the officials not sufficiently checking issues of conflict of interest, even though the supplier had signed to say there was no conflict of interest. But there are other mechanisms in addition to the existing ones that we have that weren't checked. So in that particular case, those officials were basically retrained as well as given progressive discipline to bring it to their attention that this issue of irregular expenditure as a result of conflict of interest is unacceptable. So these internal control systems were also simultaneously updated. In relation to the ones where there was the 4 where there was no official held responsible, that relates to an old case that might have been spoken about previously, where there was a difference of interpretation regarding how VAT will be applied. But in the current year, it was the year in which it was condoned by Provincial Treasury, who required confirmation as to what you did about the discipline. So in those cases, it was agreed that no discipline could have been taken because there was a genuine disagreement between our department and Provincial Treasury about how that gets applied.
Through you, Chair, I think I have dealt with all the questions asked. Thank you.
Any follow-ups? No, for follow-ups first. If there are no follow-ups, now, do you still have more questions on the department? Okay, can I have an indication, Honorable Nkondo? Any other? For the day? For the day, yes.
Isn't it that obvious? Section E, Chair. On page, can I start in 201? I see in 201 we are back to the issue I think we're discussing last week. I'm not sure whether with Treasury of the department. I'm not sure whether it was the Treasury or Economic Development. This issue of a irregular expenditure that is removed, not condoned. If I can just get a clarity from the department about the circumstances on which this irregular expenditure was removed, not condoned, because that's what it says there, unless I'm reading incorrectly. Okay, or it says it was condoned. My apologies. Can I just understand what were the circumstances of the what do you call it? CWC? Is that the committee? The one that deals with irregular expenditure.
Chair, that's in the Provincial Treasury. The Provincial Treasury condones irregular expenditure in some instances.
So the department would not know what are the circumstances on which the irregular expenditure was condoned. That report would not come to you.
Chair, we do know, we can respond to that.
So if you can provide me with that information. On page 204, Chair, if the department can then just explain I see the damages and losses, and I'm just looking from the previous financial year to the other one, that the value or the amounts have actually increases. I'm not sure whether the number of cases or it is the nature of the damage that has actually made that. If you look at the losses of the 65 cases that were looked upon, the 2 cases of the rental vehicles, and then on 205, the private vehicles. If we can just get more information about about these cases, what happened there, and how were these dealt with within the department. Then, Chair, on 206, if I can just understand, I see the limited bids. They are actually, I think if we look at them right up to page 213, what percentage of your total contracts would these limited bids be? If you can explain to me, and what circumstances would lead you to actually take the option of limited bids versus competitive bids, so that you ensure that most bidders are given opportunity to contract. So those are the three. I'm always going with this three question rule, Chair. So let me end there for now. Is this the last round on the department? I'm trying to understand. I think since morning, things have changed in this department. I don't know what happened. That's why we even started earlier. So I can see between him and Member America, things have changed.
No. Continue, Honorable Member. You still got question. Finish all your questions. Okay? No, finish. Continue with your questions. You finish on the department. Because if you don't come, because we are going to move to GMT. Oh, okay. Okay, so HOD, we can have responses.
Chair, thank you very much. Let me perhaps just start, perhaps for clarification, and just indicate, of course, on page 201, what was listed as table 4, details of current and previous year irregular expenditure removed, and says not condoned with dashes. It's just to indicate that this is the template that needs to be completed, and there was nothing that had to be recorded. So just to clarify that those zeros there are because there isn't anything to be captured, and this is a set template. But the question then that adjusted through your chair to what are the circumstances under which the irregular expenditure was condoned, that's in table number 3, the 7.8 million. That links to the point that Mr. Rahim just mentioned, if my memory serves me correctly, where in the previous year it was picked up that we, when comparing and doing our assessment and analysis of bids, removed VAT from certain bids in order to try to be able to get a proper comparative analysis from our perspective of some bidders that were VAT registered versus the bidders that wasn't. And in removing that to try to make them more comparable, or to make them comparable from our perspective, that was then identified and indicated as being incorrect in line with a particular regulation, and therefore deemed to be irregular. And we therefore needed to go through to the Provincial Treasury to request that the condonation of the expenditure that had been incurred on those bids where that particular analysis had been done in terms of a determination. And it was purely because there was a difference ultimately then in interpretation of the regulations that was held by, from a Treasury point of view, versus our department. But Mr. Rahim, would you like to add anything to that?
You're saying there was a difference in interpretation between Treasury and the department?
It was the Treasury ourselves and the AGSA, yes.
Through you, Chair, so the difference was between two sets of legislation. What came from the CIDB, it informed us that we should actually remove the VAT to make bids more comparable. what was in the preferential procurement regulations basically indicated that you should keep the VAT. So on the basis that the supply chain management system should be fair, as well as what was in the CIDB regulations, we removed the VAT to make it more comparable. And there was a difference, of course, based on the interpretation on those two sets of laws. So after consulting PT, AG, as well as National Treasury, the confirmation was that we should have followed exactly what was in the preferential procurement regulations, irrespective of whether it actually conflicted with what the CIDB was saying. So on that basis, it was condoned by the Provincial Treasury themselves. So that was the one. And then, of course, the other, so the bulk of the 7.8 million, around about 6 million of it related to that issue. The rest of it was as a result of suppliers not declaring the fact that they had a conflict of interest. And conflicts of interest typically is if somebody's actually working in government and also not in our department, but in other spheres of government, like at the City of Cape Town and other provincial departments, that they also had a business on the side, and that was not declared. What we received was that there is no conflict of interest. So matters like that was subsequently picked up by the Provincial Treasury. There's a report that they do at the end of each quarter, which then they compare parcel information of employees to the CSD. And through that process, they actually picked up that there was these little instances, which we also then had to take into consideration for condoning irregular expenditure. We submitted it to the Provincial Treasury, which they did condone. The third one was the tax status of certain suppliers being non-compliant at the time at which we actually signed off on the bid. So when somebody submits a bid, they might be compliant, but 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, when you actually finalize, their status would have changed. So that last check was not done in relation to certain suppliers, and therefore it was technically irregular. We've updated our systems also in that regard.
For the HOD.
Chair, I was going to move on to the next question. So if there's a follow-up and you want to.
No, I just wanted to go back to this issue of the VAT. So you're saying National Treasury, Provincial Treasury, gave an opinion that says you should have followed the PPFA regulations, not CIDB. So by virtue of that, outside of what the AG has said, because the AG has said you were irregular according to that particular transaction. So based on the opinion of the National Treasury and of Provincial Treasury, this was condoned because to them, you should have followed the PPFA. Okay.
Chair, I'd like to ask Mr. Rahim if he wouldn't mind to respond to the question about the material losses written off at the bottom of page 204, whether you're able to perhaps just give an indication or explanation regarding the various matters there, the various cases and the nature of those, if you're able to, please.
So through your chair, thank you, HOD. Those material losses, essentially on the end of page 204, which runs over into 205. In totality, it comes to 2.1 million rand, broken up into the different categories of it, which is basically 65 cases of damages to GG vehicles. So in the case of GG vehicles, if you take the 822,000 rand in totality, it works out to be around about 12,000 rand loss per vehicle. And the same sort of goes for the other matters, the 125 cases, the rental vehicles, and so on. Essentially, all of those losses are either a result of an accident or a pothole or on the ground, or result of public liability claims coming back to us. For example, the issue of damages to private vehicles would be where where the public actually claims from us as a result of something being a shortcoming on the road, which is generally either a pothole or signage at construction sites, etc., which could have contributed to these type of accidents occurring. In the instance where these losses are to GG vehicles or our own plant and equipment, before any of this is actually written off in the books like you see it, it undergoes a thorough investigation as to the reason why something happened, who was at fault, did the staff lose their liability protection in terms of the Treasury regulations, etc. And after a long-winded process, does this get actually confirmed and approved to be written off? So that's just the broad, overview of the various reasons for these different categories of losses. But in totality, it's around about 10,000, 12,000 Rand per item.
Moving on to the last question, Chair. The question regarding the procurement by other means. And while I'm going to ask the CFO to speak to the general approach as far as the limited bids and the details that one sees, there was a part of the question posed was what's the overall sort of percentage of the budget that is used in terms of the procurement through limited bid. Understanding that not all of these limited bids here are necessarily for a single year, but just to do a quick calculation for you, Chair, that if one looks at the total value that's awarded here of about 396 million out of which was just the year's budget, understanding that some contracts, of course, go over to another financial year. But if one just looked at the 9.4 billion budget, it's around about 4% of the budget. But again, as I say, it's not you can't do it exactly out of a single year because sometimes the contracts move across onto another financial year. But perhaps CFO, if you'd like to give a bit of details around the limited bid and the aspects that are there.
Thank you, Chair, through you. So the HOD, by that explanation, has just shown that as a general approach, the department follows an open bidding process. There are exceptional circumstances in which we do limited bids, and I will list them. They have been issued by way of Provincial Treasury instructions, and therefore, for any limited bid, over a 5 million Rand value, we actually need to prove these circumstances to the Provincial Treasury with evidence, and we need to do this with the consultation and with, of course, not the approval, but with the concurrence. So the reasons are the following. One, and this is what is captured in the Provincial Treasury instructions, which can also be made available, where goods or services are designed or manufactured by a supplier. In that instance, if you want that particular good or that particular service, then you can't put it out onto the open market because that is, of course, the sole copyright, as it were, or ownership of the supplier that manufactures the goods or services. Secondly, when you went on an open bid, you got responses. They are either all non-compliant or they're exorbitantly high, and therefore you've run out of time to go on another open bid. On that basis, you can then follow a limited bid process. Thirdly, when there was a business case around a market assessment that has been completed and it shows that the only possible way is limited bid. Limited bid doesn't mean that you necessarily only always go to one person. You could go to 5 people. The point is that it's different from open bidding in the sense that you choose then the group or the individuals on the basis of what I'm just mentioning to you, and that would then be a limited bid. The fourth one is when you can buy for under exceptionally good circumstances from a particular bidder. And the final one is when there's an issue of continuity where work is incomplete, but not as a result of anything that has been done by the consultant. For example, if there's planning approvals outstanding and we need to put those in place and the consultant didn't get to do that. Or let's say in the instance of drafting legislation, when the processes were just not favorable for the consultant in order to finish up that kind of work. So by way of example, you'd see on the table that's listed here, there's quite a number of security companies appointed, and it shows limited bid. Technically speaking, all of those companies were bought off of the open bid framework from the Provincial Treasury. At the time when we bought them or when we needed them, the Provincial Treasury was in the process of extending their contract. In other words, they haven't gone through the complete process, and therefore they didn't give us packages, but we could still go out and use the exact same service providers that's on that list following an open process, but through a limited process to get the approvals correct. So that is a couple of pages worth of the limited bids that you see there. There's others where you would see a specific training interventions like our ethics training. That training content was designed in collaboration with the department based on some ethical issues over the years that we've encountered. So it was designed specifically for the department, and that we've rolled out in the department under our ethics implementation plan. So that would also be a limited bid. There are others such as some of our when you have an emergency, in the case of emergency, because of the timing issue, you won't go out on an open bid because you don't have the time to first take 2 weeks just to get the advert right, to then get a consultant to pull together the bill and all of that. In the case of emergency, it's a matter of life and limb, and it's a matter of making safe. And for that reason, what we would do is we would go to suppliers that have proven their capability and their ability to then react immediately. So those are just some of the examples. If you have specific ones that you want me to respond to, I can. But those are just some of the examples applying the list of exceptions as per the Provincial Treasury instructions that I've just mentioned. Thank you, actually.
As a follow-up, can I just check, is there a specific ceiling or quantum that you can go out on a limited bid or any? You would be able to share with us a policy that just explains this so that we can, I'm sure in the resolutions, Chair, we can get that and read for ourselves.
Can I respond, Chair?
Honorable Maseko's hand was up.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe some other day I'll get help. And through your indulgence, I think on page 207, there is the mentoring construction CIBD Eden, Cape Winelands and Eden region. Also, they are on the limited bid. But the question I want to ask is just to kill this fake news of not supporting the SMMEs. Is that mentoring being done like what you were doing for, I think if you go to page 199, appointing the consultant for the development and mentoring of the constructions in those areas? Okay, that I wanted to put that because there's fake news of there's no support to that from the department, that it's in the AP, in the annual report where the support is there. Thank you very much, Chair.
Chair, if I can respond to the previous question, the answer to that question is no, there's not a limit, but what there is there's a limit in terms of how the department may deal with it. In other words, the Provincial Treasury instructions indicate anything that exceeds the value of 5 million rand must go through the Provincial Treasury. So we can't conclude it or do anything with it until it's gone through them. They've checked that it complies with all of the rules. They're okay with it. They've checked that this isn't an opportunity where the system is abused or you could have gone out on open bid or there's other entrants in the market or anything like that. They check it and they give a formal letter in respect of each one of these through to the department, and only then can there be a resolution signed or a letter of award, which is what the AG checks for every single limited bid.
Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chair. In linking the question, the comment that I made about the SMMEs, I just want to find out. Now, if you go and you make such a beautiful investment on, I see on the value of the contract, like on 202, what is the intention, why that mentoring was important? And was there the needs assessment for that to happen within those area, and
what, if I can get the clarity of the business plan that is attached to the cost attached to that mentoring of construction for CIBD in Eden, Cape Winelands and the Eden region. Thank you very much.
Through you, Chair, I'll ask Ms. Jenica if she'd be able to respond because it's her and her team that do that.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So the reason why we did mentoring in specifically that areas was it was for on and off-site mentoring, and the contractors in that area had their own projects on which they required mentoring support. And the reason why it was a limited bid is that we had advertised it twice and did not receive any bids for those three. The one was on and off-site mentoring, and the other one was to assist them with enterprise development, so that to grow their business and look at it in terms of enterprise support. So that was why we specifically chose those areas.
We're interested when you advertise the bidding, when you advertise the tender.
Yes, in terms of the professionally registered companies that we were looking for to provide the mentoring service, we had nobody responding.
If there are no further questions.
Sorry, sorry, you disturbed me with the message while I was trying to listen.
No, I listen for you. I was listening carefully. Okay.
With due respect, I don't trust your ears that much. So the question I was asking was the business plan itself. You did the bidding. Yes, there was no, and then you got that. But what was the needs, the assessment needs for that? Why was it important that you had to do that mentoring within those regions?
Thank you. So what we normally do with contractor development is we identify, we first go into specific areas and do what we do as a CIS, a construction information session for all contractors in that area. And within the financial year, we had done a CIS in the Garden Route and Cape Winelands area. So some contractors that attend there would say they would be interested in mentoring, others would indicate structured training or any other training needs. So what we then identified was where people could fill a class to fill and do some structured training. We would put them on those programs. Where people are interested in health and safety training, we would do that as well. So this group had also identified they needed enterprise support and on and off-site mentoring because they had specific projects which they were running in that area. So it was linked to a previous information session which was run to identify needs, and then we had rolled out training, and that's how we identify the need.
Thank you very much for that explanation. But I'm trying to align up. The questions is to build up to come to the problem that we are having. And I think my colleague mentioned we are going back to Mossel Bay, and already is just becoming too much to handle. But we've got the department that will support us now. In my head, it works this way that if you come do training, there are projects that are coming. You develop an anticipation of the sort, because I'm going to go for training. That means I might get the work there. Now, that is why I'm asking a question of when you the diagnostic assessments for the needs, the reason behind why specific that area versus when the project is there, do you sort of align that there might be a need because there's a project, or is there training development of your target that is there that you are doing the training within different areas? How does it get to be aligned to what you want to achieve? Is it per construction that is coming, or is training? It's separate, it's parallel, it's not interlinked in between.
Chair, if I may. There isn't a direct correlation. So there is a training program, understanding that that's what that team does, because of course our work isn't the only work that is going out necessarily. And therefore we believe it's important to be investing in and supporting contractors from a development perspective, whether there is work coming from our department or potentially a municipality or a national department or even potentially private work. Because I do think training is always beneficial for anybody to undertake. So they're not directly linked.
Honorable Seleko.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to lash on to what Member Maseko has been saying. And I just want the department just to explain to us, because one has to manage the perception or outside there in terms of the small and medium enterprises. And is there a possibility that one would go to a particular district and then you will find that the SMMEs that are currently operating in that particular district does not meet the requirements for the kind of scope of work that they need to assist with a bigger contractor? If it happens, what then? Because you always find this kind of question in communities saying that we are from this particular, we are from Beaufort West, but the contractor or the small companies that you are bringing them from Mossel Bay, they are from George. And that gives a wrong perception as if they are not taken into consideration. You know, and I think that's what we are confronted with now as the Committee of Infrastructure. Going back to Mossel Bay, there is a probability that they might be told that in terms of the scope of work that the SMMEs needs to do, neither of you qualifies. Hence, we need to go to George, or hence we need to go to Neisner. And how does the department manage such things? Or don't you guys do a deep in dive before a particular Proladuka project is implemented so that you can actually be proactive in dealing with these Molanyana issues so that we are not conflicted as member of parliament as if, because one need to be honest and put face to the SMMEs. Once you put a face to the SMMEs, one would come here and try to say a certain face is not taken into consideration because of the kind of history that we have as a country, that unfortunately it has been like that. The small companies has a particular face, and the smaller companies that want to come into the sector has a particular face. So when one has to compare the faces, and then you'll end up taking sides, and we don't want to find ourselves as members of parliament going into that phase. Hence, we want to ask these particular questions so that we get out of here not being confused, doing what is expected of us as member of parliament. Thank you very much.
All right, perhaps let me start. It touches, and I know that the committees are different, Chair. You mentioned that it touches on a bit of a conversation this morning. So the department undertakes for projects more than 10 million Rand an empowerment impact assessment. So in order to bring in the elements into the tender process for a contractor to know upfront that they're required to respond to. The empowerment impact assessment covers a number of aspects, which include the types of skills that may be available in the area, given the project that we're looking at, the potential suppliers that are available in a very close proximity or a broader proximity, depending on the type of materials that are required for the project. Whether they are SMMEs, smaller contractors that are able to do a particular type of work, whether they're available or in a broader area. And all of that information then is put through some of the people that you see that are appointed in order to inform the tender documentation against which the contractor will tender. It is then those, one could almost call them contract participation goals that are set, are then monitored through the course of the project. Of course, just because the empowerment impact assessment has said there could be based upon our analysis and the understanding, there could be particular suppliers of materials available in that specific area. The supplier must still be able to meet the necessary requirements. So whether they meet the relevant legal requirements, tax compliance, whatever it is that's necessary. And so what you're finding and what members of Ms. Jenica's team as well as the CFO's team do is they'll go out and have information sessions with potential suppliers, SMME service providers in areas to try to assist them. And as was mentioned this morning, they take along SARS with them, the National Treasury and others to then try to assist the various companies to make sure that they are VAT, if they have to be VAT compliant, that they're VAT compliant or SARS registered, that they are registered on the central supplier database, etc. So that is the work that the department tries to do in order to prepare the industry when we know a project is coming along. But more often than not, there are far more companies than there are necessarily opportunities that are available. That is also something we need to understand, and therefore everybody is going to be pushing, which is one can appreciate, to try to get their foot in the door over somebody else. So that's very simplistically. I don't know, Chantal, whether you'd like to add anything, or even Pat.
So maybe just one more point to add is that the supply chain staff were in Mossel Bay on Thursday. On request of the contractors, there were about 100 of them wanting information sessions and support. And so we took everybody along that is able to assist the contractors, whether it be SARS, whether it is the accreditation agents for PE, whether it is your NHBRC, so that they can get the information there and so that they can get the service there. And the teams help them to register on the CSD, the Central Supplier Database by National, explaining how it works, explaining why they need to maintain it and how they could log into their profiles, and explaining the whole issue of how do you participate in tender processes and how does these opportunities work, so that everybody understands exactly what the process is. They were allowed the questions that they were allowed whatever problems they had, complaints or whatever, to register that with the team as well. So the team did spend a full day with them on their request, and this will be the team that will be accompanying the committee when you go there.
No, Chair, one appreciates the response from the HOD and the CFO. And I think the frustration is that one have to look in terms of the lifespan of the particular project, in particular Mossel Bay. And I've always had this argument saying that we should be very proactive in when we go in there, try to do all these sessions. It does not assist me when a session is taking place, whereas the project is closer to completion of its lifespan. I think I'm just in general, and I think that's what we are battling with now. You know, the project is already taking place, and people see there's action left, right, and center, but they are not being taken into consideration. And now a department comes to me and says, no, we've taken 100 people, and we have taken through the process of saying what you need to do for you to be taken into consideration. I think those are the kind of issues, one, we need to avoid going forward, unless I'm not understanding what you are saying. Thank you very much.
Chair, if I were to latch on what Member Seleko is raising, of the information sessions that you would have done at a time, including this one, CFO, how many of these, or from that group, what percentage of SMMEs do they actually get contracted in your projects?
Chair. So to Member Seleko, just in terms of clarification, the empowerment impact assessment process is a process that precedes any contract. It's that process that informs what is the contract participation goals for that community. And even in terms of the previous questions that we've answered in terms of the training programs, we have annual training programs that the department sets and that we deliver across the Western Cape. Then, in addition to that, we go to whichever place as per the requests of the contractors, because they do require us and make requests, and we go and do training interventions. But the empowerment impact assessment precedes the project, doesn't happen midway or after. The reason why we went there is it was a particular request after the visit by yourselves that they formally sent to the department to say, can we bring them help? Can we assist them? Can we do training? And they've even identified what are the kind of support that they wanted and how many they're going to be and so on. So that's just the first part. The second question then to Member Nkondlo is that when we do training interventions, especially from a supply chain point of view, we from a supply chain point of view don't go and check everybody that was on training, how many of them got jobs, because ours is about capacity building. PET's team that's doing the empowerment impact assessment and the participation goals, they go in and they go and evaluate of all of the participation goals that's included in the tender, how many of them were achieved, plus who were then from that community or from the area, who were the contractors that were then included in that project. So I can't give you a percentage to say if we train 100 contractors, of those 100 contractors, X percentage has been given opportunities.
That after Honorable Nkondlo, I think that's going to be the last question, and then break for 10 minutes so that we move to the GMT. So if maybe there are people who wants to refresh, they can do that. After the answer, we are going to break. Honorable Nkondlo.
So CFO, after you have trained, you're saying PET's team is the one that does or looks at the empowerment assessment. And I'm trying to hear if I hear you well. So it's PET's team that will have the information that I'm looking for of the percentage, or as a department, you don't look at that information at all. Why? What's the purpose of training? But CIDP is doing that. Isn't that the work of CIDP? No. She's responding to me as I asked.
No. Honorable Minister, normally I will kind of allow members if they still got more questions that they are not clear about. I don't want to stifle discussions, but obviously, Honorable Nkondlo, do you still have any further question you want to ask? You've exhausted. Okay. Can we break now just for 10 minutes and be back at 4 o'clock and start with GMT? I thought by now we'll have finished.
Just picking your fact. She's speaking of fact, which is what you believe in. Anisha se não se vai sair na
Well, I'm in the office. I don't know whether you'll be.
Yeah, so I'll only see you if they.
Let's go.
regards to material losses, Chairperson, where criminal conduct or rather theft was committed, resulting in the losses of an amount of over 4 million due to what they call fuel cards. Can I just get clarity on that? And then what is the update on the investigations? Because I see it's currently being investigated by various bodies, including GMT, SAPS, and Provincial Forensic Services. In terms of the investigations, who committed these acts, or is it employees, or they still employed? And then if you can just give clarity on that one, and then I'll go to my question that I asked earlier on page 132. Can I get clarity on the following? As I mentioned earlier, there's 3 cases stated in the table that was brought to the disciplinary hearing. One was due to an employee being absent from work without a reason or permission, and then the other 2 was due to theft, bribery, and fraud. Out of the 3 cases, as it shows on the table there, out of the 3 cases, 1 was dismissed, and then 2 suspended without pay, and then with a final written warning. Final written warning means that in order to get to that final written warning, there was obviously 3 warnings that took place, which means out of the 3, 1 was dismissed. So I just want clarity, which one of the 3 cases was dismissed? Is it one that was is one of the cases the employee who was absent without a reason, or is it one of those employees related to that serious cases? Or is both 2 of the serious cases still employed under the department? If I can get clarity on that as well, please.
Thank you very much. Other members? Okay, can we have a response while other members might be thinking about their questions? Yes, HOD? Is it off?
Thank you very much. I just would like clarity from you, Chair, please. The question posed in relation to page 132 is in part D of the report. You indicated in your opening comments that we're dealing with parts C, E, and F. So I'd just like clarity, please, before I can respond on that particular question. And then the question regarding the fuel cards and the status of that investigation, I think I need to request the GMT team if they're able to give any update a little bit around that in terms of details that you're aware of what was listed there under the theft and losses. And I do know that we've got the PFS team online as well, if there's any further update generally. But I'd like to just, as I say, get clarity, please, Chair, in relation to the question posed for page 132 before I ask Rian respond.
132 is under part E. Yeah, GMT.
Your Chair, it's section 312, which is labor relations, which is part D.
Kasi.
Is it under M? Do I have a different report from you? Or? It's under part E.
Is that it?
There's 2 questions. There's one under part E, and then there's one under.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, it's under part E.
Yeah.
It's part E.
It's part E, yeah?
Yes, GMT.
Page 132 in my book
132.
is GMT. It's part D. I can reply, Chair. I know the answer to it, but I'm just undertaking your instruction from the fact that.
Yeah.
Page 132, part D, section 312, you're referring to table 312.2 and 312.3. Am I correct? So in that response, Chair, I can indicate that one of the people that was the one person that was dismissed on the basis that the type of conduct was steals, bribes, or commits fraud. So
Okay, and what happened to the other one? Is it still employed by the department because you only have 1 dismissal?
That the other one was listed as a suspension without salary and a final written warning. Was clearly still in the employ as at the end of March 2023, and that would have been the outcome from the presiding officer in terms of the disciplinary case.
Sorry, Chairperson, I didn't hear correctly. She said 1 was dismissed and 1 was suspended.
Okay, CFO.
There we go. Thank you. Mine's now working.
Yeah.
So as I indicated, one person was dismissed for stealing, bribing, or committing fraud. The other that was also disciplined for stealing, bribing, or committing fraud, according to the presiding officer, issued a sanction of suspension without a salary and a final written warning.
I just want clarity because it could mean different things. Suspension and a final written warning. I'm asking, is that person still employed or is he no longer employed?
So as it stands, I don't have the exact detail as to whether the person is still employed. They may have left the employee for some other reason. But as a result of this misconduct case, they were not dismissed. The presiding officer gave an indication of suspension without salary and a final written warning. They may still be employed. They may not. I do not have that person's name in terms of whether they are still employed in GMT. But remember, it is the presiding officer that gives the sanction in a disciplinary matter, which is then undertaken and conveyed and implemented by the department.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. The 4 million rand for fraud and corruption, there was a case that was investigated by forensics, and there were staff members involved, not from GMT, from one of our client departments or a few of the client departments. Card fraud, unfortunately, is something that affects GMT as a fleet owner, and it affects most fleet owners nowadays. You have syndicates that target specifically the fuel cards. So it is something that we are paying particular attention to. We are looking at our systems, our tracking technology, so that we can have proactive measures that we put in place to prevent fraud as far as possible. In the cases that we've reported in the annual report, if I'm recalling correctly, there was an investigation and there were officials dismissed. But like I said, it's not GMT officials. There were officials in another department, and forensic services is also working with the police, because we did report the case to the police as well.
Committed a crime and was not dismissed. I'm not sure how you don't have it before. As to whether the person is sitting amongst us or.
Yeah, with all respect, this is a disciplinary matter that's reported in this annual report that happened sometime in the 2022-23 financial year. As far as the disciplinary processes are concerned, and the team would be able to confirm, when the department institutes misconduct proceedings against a staff member and it goes through a disciplinary hearing, the presiding officer then issues the outcome of that in terms of the sanction that is to be applied. If the presiding officer, even though the department may call for and argue for a sanction of dismissal, which it does in every instance of potential allegations of fraud or theft, we argue for a sanction of dismissal, because that is a zero tolerance for the department. That is not necessarily that the presiding officer will issue that particular sanction. And they may find, for whatever reason, that there are mitigating circumstances or other issues to be considered, and that therefore a sanction just short of dismissal is issued by the presiding officer. In this instance, the sanction that was issued was suspension without a salary and a final written warning. As it stands, I do not have a report of the specific individual to know at what date this occurred and whether that person is still in the employ of the department. Out of the Department of what was Transport and Public Works and obviously GMT, within this particular situation, the person may still be employed. And the team have very kindly actually found the details. And in this particular instance, the person amended, in inverted commas, her SIC certificate. In other words, did commit fraud, because changing your SIC certificate is also considered a fraudulent activity. And the disciplinary committee, in terms of the presiding officer, did find that there were mitigating circumstances. In her case, apparently severe depression, and therefore a sanction just short of dismissal was issued in terms of suspension without salary and a final written warning. And therefore take it that as it stands, the person is still in the employ of GMT, but the whole idea would also make sure that she's learned a lesson and would not do so again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for the context. And I completely, as a former, commissioner of the CCMA, I understand the kind of process that one goes through. I just wanted to know whether there is with the issuing of a final written warning, whether there's a time period attached to it, because certainly it cannot linger forever as a sanction, so it has to come to an end. Perhaps we can get more clarity on that.
Through you, Chair, yes, usually a final written warning or written warnings are on a personnel file for 6 months and then removed.
Thank you for the response. For all theoretical purposes and intellectual acrobats, there's no sanction at this point registered against that particular employee. Thank you.
Any further questions, honorable members? On GMT, on all the sections? No. I don't want, I don't want the members to say I did not give them an opportunity to ask questions and I was tackling the process. Normally, we conduct our business very openly and fairly and in a very relaxed way. So, in the absence of further questions, that means that we coming to an end of our session with the department. Honorable Maseko.
Yeah, last stuff. Thank you very much. I just want to, I know today is the last annual report that will be sitting in with the HOD. HOD Gush, thank you for being the person you are, and thanks for being with us, sharing that empowerment that me and Member Nkondlo, we are for this financial popular with, trying to learn. Every question to us is not about policing, it's about learning from the department. And you are one of the people that you have been so generous in making sure that you share, you empower us in every way that you can. And you have been always open your phone, always. It's just there. When there is a message we send, you are always there to respond to us. So I cannot say thank you enough on behalf of the committee. I can only say that go to the horizon and go and empower others, because that means if you are leaving us, you know that the work that you're supposed to do here, the purpose that you had to serve here in the WCPP and the department, you have achieved it. You need to go and open the doors for others for the future. So with that being said, thank you very much. A little bit something.
Chair, if I may just say thank you very much. I assume that SCOPA has got budget that the Mobility Department Standing Committee does not have. Thank you very much. If I may have a sense of the value so I can put it on my gift register. I'm still employed until the end of tomorrow, so I do need to make. Okay, thank you kindly. I appreciate that. I will make sure it's duly referenced. And from my side to the committee, thank you very much for the professional way that you've handled the department over the years, the respect that we've shown to us, and hopefully we have shown to the committee. It is sincerely appreciated, and I can only wish you all the best in your future endeavors while you do try to link budgets and indicators together. I will listen with interest, and maybe I'll be a member of the public coming and asking some questions later on. Thank you, Chair.
Please, HOD, please accept those flowers as our token of appreciation for the work that we have done for the department and also for the time we have spent with us as the Committee on Public Accounts. That's also an illustration of the human part of SCOPA as well. So after all, we are human beings, you know. So that's just, and we always do that illustration through Member Maseko, you know. So she's the one who's always doing and showing that after all the hard questions we are asking, we are human beings. There's the human element side of us as well to appreciate and give credit where credit is due. So accept that as our token of appreciation. Also, thank you, also Minister, for your availability, and as well as the Honorable Simas. We always appreciate when we make a call and you positively respond to it. And when we ask questions, again, I will always say we are not wanting to catch you up or wanting to be difficult. We just playing our role of having to hold the executive to account. And of course, we are doing that in a cooperative manner. And we have tried by all means to cooperate with all the departments that are coming to us. Thank you very much for your availability and your department, HOD, CFO. And also thanks also to our accountability ecosystem partners, the Auditor General and the Audit Committee. Thank you very much for always being available. And also to you, honorable members. I know it's been a very long month. At least you are just on the finishing line now. Thank you very much for always being available. The meeting is adjourned, honorable members and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson.
So at least we finish at 4:30, before 5. For your archives. Oh, yeah. That's historical. Yes. Outside.